There is a narrative that men leave first. They disappear without warning, fall out of love overnight, and they ghost because they're cowards. And yes, some do. But the truth that burns deeper than any heartbreak is this: women abandon themselves long before any man ever walks away. The leaving begins inside of us, quiet, slow, and almost invisible. It starts with the first time you soften your no. You let a boundary slide. You swallow discomfort instead of naming it. The first time you feel something and your gut tighten but choose to be polite over honest. Women do not get left. They disconnect themselves from one compromise at a time until the relationship becomes a place that no longer has room for their spirit. And the most painful abandonment of all is the one that we perform on ourselves. Men don't abandon women who are anchored in their power. They abandon a woman who's already abandoned herself because she stopped shining in the way that commands respect. She becomes small, accommodating, digestible, easy to manipulate, taken for granted, easy to mistreat. And it isn't because she isn't worthy, but because she believes she has to trade pieces of herself to be loved. And when a woman trades her essence for connection, the connection dies anyways. Maybe slowly, maybe violently, but it's inevitable. The black cat energy is not about avoiding heartbreak. It's about refusing to participate in your own abandonment ever again. It's recognizing the exact moments your body tightens, your breath shortens, and your tongue presses hard against silence. And choosing yourself instead of peace that will cost you your soul. A woman becomes impossible to leave when she stops leaving herself first. She doesn't contort. She doesn't tolerate half love. She doesn't beg for reassurance from a man who has not earned access to her softness. She does not collapse her own boundaries to avoid conflict. She does not romanticize potential and call it connection. She doesn't perform emotional pick me gymnastics to secure affection. She is home to herself. And a woman who is home to herself is terrifyingly powerful. Because when she is rooted, she can love deeply without needing to disappear. She can open without dissolving, receive without losing herself. And if a man tries to leave, she will not chase because she does not care. Not because she does not care, but because she refuses to follow someone out of alignment from her truth. That is the kind of woman that's magnetic. Not because men want to possess her, but because she cannot be possessed at all. She chooses, she discerns, she evaluates, and she stands in sovereignty, not scarcity. And men who are used to being held above accountability will tremble in her presence. Women think their pain comes from abandonment, but the devastation always begins earlier. At the moment they choose the connection over self, they ignore the internal whisper. They override their instincts. They sense a misalignment but continue anyways because they crave closeness more than clarity. And I say this with all of the love in the world. You cannot build a life with someone on the version of you that betrays herself to keep love. That version of you is temporary. She is unsustainable. She will erupt eventually through resentment, numbness, rage that you cannot swallow. A woman abandons herself when she forgets she was whole before he arrived, that her power was never borrowed, it was her birthright. And she forgets she is not a guest in the connection, but the entire home. Men do not abandon women. Women leave themselves. And when you return to your power, you no longer grieve what walks away because nothing taken from you is ever a loss when you refuse to lose yourself in the process. I'm Megan Webster, an abuse recovery coach, a trauma-informed strategist, and the woman a narcissist hopes to never meet twice. This is the Narcissist Worst Nightmare podcast where women stop abandoning themselves for connection and start choosing partners who are actually capable of meeting them. This episode will break open everything you thought abandonment meant. It is going to expose the places that you detached yourself from and called it loyalty. We are not here to make you comfortable. We are here to make you sovereign. You do not wake up one day just disconnected from yourself. You bleed into it. Slowly, silently, casually. You tolerate small discomforts. You rationalize emotional dissonance. You swallow truths that taste like metal while dismissing your intuition because you want this to work. You want this man to be different. You want the story to play out beautifully, even though your body has been screaming through tension, hesitation, and unease. Self-abandonment is subtle. It is not this big dramatic collapse. It is death by 1,000 paper cuts, the it's fines, the slow erosion of self-trust until you can't hear your own knowing through the noise of hope. It is the moment you convince yourself that intuition is insecurity, anxiety is an overreaction, and red flags are trauma talking instead of wisdom calling your name. It's the moment you let someone else's comfort matter more than your own. And one day you will wake up feeling empty beside a man you call yours. You look at him and you realize you don't even know what you want from him anymore because you haven't asked yourself what you want from yourself in years. It was not his abandonment that broke you. It was every moment you silenced the parts of you that tried to save you from yourself. Black cat women do not lose themselves like that anymore. They feel the first abandonment pulse and they stop. They listen. They do not negotiate on their truth or override instinct, and they certainly do not trade their inner voice for conditional affection. They recognize that losing themselves for connection is not intimacy, it's self erasure. The core belief here is that abandonment happens the moment he leaves. The slammed door, the deleted number, the blocked social media, the silent fade out, and the conversation that cuts like ice. But abandonment began long before the breakup. It began in your body. The body knows before the mind fully understands it. Your nervous system hears what words tried to hide. A woman's stomach drops when a man's inconsistency mirrors something familiar from her past. Her breath becomes shallow when tone carries volatility. Her shoulders tense when she senses unavailability she cannot define yet. And her jaw will clench when she knows she's shrinking to be easier to love. You do not abandon yourself through logic, you abandon yourself through sensation. Instead of listening, you override. Instead of pausing, you rush. Instead of naming the discomfort, you soothe it for him. You intellectualize red flags, reframe pain into potential, mother grown men into lovers they hope one day will rise. Your body says leave, but your fear of being alone says stay. Your intuition says something's wrong, but your hope says maybe this time will be different. And that hope is a very sweet delusion. When you stop abandoning your body, men will stop abandoning you because this requires you to shrink first. A woman who is rooted in her nervous system is not available for manipulation. She does not need closure. Her body already gives it. You do not need proof. Your instincts are already that. She isn't clinging to someone to undo her peace. She lets them go without ceremony. If this is landing for you and you're hearing me say these things and you're like, holy shit, I've lived this, this is my life, it's exactly why I built the Sacred Standards 30-day challenge, because healing is not passive talk therapy. You have done that. It is practiced embodiment. It's intentional. It's choosing yourself in small moments until it becomes identity instead of effort. I will teach you the one skill that changes every relationship you enter into next: self-loyalty. Not in a protective way. It's self-assurance in your behavior, in your body. In a moment where old you would self-abandon, this challenge doesn't allow you to do that. Men leave when the version of you they were benefiting from dissolves. When the woman who bent herself into the shape of their comfort reclaims her own spine. When she stops accommodating emotional laziness. When she grows and her growth exposes everything he refuses to evolve into. A man does not leave you because you're unlovable. He leaves because he can't survive inside a relationship where you have stopped abandoning yourself for him. Narcissists crumble when you return back to your power. Avoidant men flee when you stop chasing. Emotionally lazy men will leave when you stop carrying the emotional workload. And immature men will leave when you stop applauding the bare minimum effort. Abandonment is not rejection. It is your alignment correcting itself. Women cling to men who are leaving because they fear being alone with themselves. They are afraid of confronting how many times they walked away internally before he ever physically left. But when a woman comes home to herself, she doesn't fear abandonment. She respects the separation because that is a clear mind. Separation is direction. It's the universe rearranging what you thought you needed and showing you what you actually deserve. Black cat women do not collapse when somebody walks away. They exhale because they do not abandon themselves to keep anybody. Anything you don't betray yourself for is never a true loss. Hyper independence is a scar that looks like strength. It's armor disguised as empowerment. It develops slowly from years of being the only emotionally responsible person in the room, from relationships where vulnerability was weaponized, from childhoods where expression meant punishment, from partnerships leaning in meant bleeding out. Women who survive abuse and narcissists become hyper independent not because they don't want support, but because support was never safe. They learned to self-regulate because nobody else regulated with them. They became providers because nobody else showed up. They grew spines of steel because gentleness was exploited. Their hyper-independence is not arrogance, it's evidence. but eventually that armor becomes a cage. You are not meant to remain guarded forever. You evolve from hyper independence into intentional interdependence. She learns that strength is not measured by how much she needs, but by how deeply she can trust herself to hold boundaries even when she loves. She doesn't soften blindly, she does so selectively, and she chooses connection from her sovereign heart, not from hunger. You are not meant to be unreachable, you are meant to be unshakable. Hyper independence is fear dressed up. Interdependence is power, flexible, sensual, grounded, and discerning. A woman in her range knows she can stand alone, but she also deserves to lean, not to collapse, chase, or contort. She is soft enough to receive and anchored enough to never lose herself again. The mind will rationalize fantasies when it wants connection, but the body refuses to participate in fantasies. Your nervous system does not care how charming he is, how deeply you think he could love you, how beautifully he speaks, or how intense the chemistry feels. Your body is not seduced by words, it reacts to patterns. It notices inconsistencies before you consciously register them. It catches tone before your logic forms language. It stores history, compares it to the present, and signals danger through sensation before your brain understands the meaning. Women who are disconnected from their bodies don't lack intuition. Their intuition is screaming beneath layers of conditioning that taught them to ignore themselves. They abandon their instincts one override at a time. He cancels last minute, but you tell yourself he's busy. Your chest will tighten, but you override it. He says he'll call and he doesn't, and you just tell yourself he forgot, but your throat locks up and you override it. He touches you tenderly, but you feel something underneath that is sharp. Your stomach flips, but you override it. He apologizes in words, but nothing changes in his patterns. Your jaw clenches, but you override it. Women do not lose intuition, they numb it. Not because they can't feel, but because feeling means they'd have to act. When you understand how to adopt the black cat mentality, you will feel everything and listen. You follow the first pull of the intuition without needing an essay of evidence. You don't abandon your body to preserve a connection that is built on fantasy. Your intuition is not insecurity. It's your nervous system identifying emotional data faster than your mind can decode. Learning to trust yourself again is not about thinking harder, it's about listening sooner. The moment your body contracts, freezes, hesitates, something is happening for you. Truth is arriving. It's not panic, it's not paranoia, it's just data. Now, I know there's a version of you emerging who no longer negotiates with potential. You honor what's real instead of fantasizing about what could be. You don't offer softness to maintain connection. You offer softness where safety exists. You no longer beg for clarity because you're willing to walk away from what is not clear to you. You do not glue yourself to a spark and call it compatibility. You wait to see if the spark can sustain flame. Self-abandonment once felt like the cost of love because you learned to make yourself smaller for someone who could feel bigger. You learned to swallow discomfort and hold pain quietly so the relationship didn't break louder. You believed endurance was devotion, not realizing that endurance was actually survival. But this new version of you behaves differently. She listens to her instincts rather than silencing it. You've stopped contorting yourself into somebody more palatable. You do not need to have everything to be chosen. You choose yourself first, then chooses who is allowed to be beside you. This isn't hardness or closed heart energy. It is calibrated power, emotional discernment that does not collapse under longing. It's sovereignty that refuses to betray itself for connection. You are not auditioning, you are assessing. You are becoming the woman who never abandons herself again to keep from being abandoned by somebody else. If your softness used to feel like exposure, like opening the door for someone to walk straight into you and rearrange your self-worth, your vulnerability was not met with care, it was met with leverage. You learned love required effort, performance, and emotional acrobats, or the access to you was earned through suffering rather than safety. Softness became something you rationalized every time you looked into it because it felt like it took something from you. Softness is not the enemy. Your misplaced understanding was. When you pour softness into someone unequipped to hold it, it becomes erosion. And you learn to carry that erosion in your nervous system for years. Now your softness can return differently. It is slower, wiser, layered with discernment. It does not return as surrender, but as a reward to you listening to your body. Softness becomes a home you enter when you feel held, not a weapon you hand to someone who hasn't proven they can be trusted with it. There will be a moment for you that will feel like an awakening when you are no longer afraid of losing men, you're afraid of losing yourself. It's the shift from "I hope he stays" to "I hope I can hold myself through this." In that moment, dating is no longer a battlefield where you bleed to be chosen. It becomes a space of discernment where you walk, watch, feel, and decide. The woman you become here is dangerous to the old world because she can want someone deeply without needing them to validate her worth. She can desire connection and still walk away if it costs her her self respect. She can love, but she no longer abandons herself inside of the loving. Where a man meets this version of you, he doesn't get obedience or anxiety or emotional turmoil in exchange for connection. He gets presence, awareness, standards, and a clear heart. He gets a woman who listens to her intuition like scripture. He gets someone who sits across from him with softness in her eyes and boundaries in her spine. He feels both warmth and power, both invitation and self sufficiency. You do not chase chemistry hoping it'll become commitment. You observe whether it does. You don't hand your heart over hoping he protects it. You watch how he handles access before you open the door. You are no longer a woman men win. You are a woman they meet, rise to, or fall away from. The right man will not be intimidated by that. He will be relieved. You deserve a love that meets you, not drains you. A love that holds softness without mistaking it for weakness. One that pays attention, not lip service. You are allowed to be the woman who feels deeply and chooses wisely. You are allowed to want connection without abandoning your intuition. You have to give yourself permission to require emotional maturity as a baseline, not a bonus. You are not asking for too much. This is the bare minimum for your nervous system to feel safe. You are now entering the chapter where you do not betray yourself, not even a little bit. If this episode cracks something open in you, good. That means you're not just thinking differently. You are starting to become someone new. The woman who no longer fears losing love because she refuses to lose herself ever again. Now you know why men don't leave, women leave themselves. And you're done doing that. You've left the abuse, you've healed, and you are ready to date again. Only this time, it has to be safe, stable, and nothing like your past. The Sacred Standards 30-Day Challenge is where this shift gets to happen. It is built around practicing self-loyalty instead of collapsing into old patterns. You integrate one standard, one behavior, one nervous system recognition lead at a time rather than old instincts. By Christmas, you will feel steady, self-aware, and your body signals make sense to you. By January, your dating profile reflects who you are, and your dating conversations come from self-worth, not from wounds. And by the spring, you are no longer pulled towards chaos. You are only meeting men who can match the woman you become and have probably found your dream guy because you took the time to do the work. Inside, we have 2 coaching calls, a private space for message support. You get a dating profile audit from me so you're attracting the right men instead of recycled dynamics. You will also receive my first connection messaging scripts to filter men you don't want in a snap, a red flag detector so you can identify safety early on rather than sorting through confusion later. This is 30 days together of embodiment, not journaling, not hoping for change, but truly living it. Most people try on the new year, new me in January and will fall back into the same apps with the same choices and the same outcomes. Starting now means you enter 2026 with your standards already set. You are protecting the healing that you have earned, and you do not leave your safety up to luck. We start on December 15th. Clean slate, new patterns, standards raised. You are finished abandoning yourself for connection. Sacred Standards 30-Day Challenge is where your dating life will change forever. This is the Narcissist Worst Nightmare podcast where women in their healing do not aim to be chosen. They decide and the world adjusts.